Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars through the main window. The ship was small compared to the massive vessels that other species built, but it was home to him and his crew of 32 humans. They had been exploring space for 6 months now, looking for new worlds and resources that Earth desperately needed. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange readings," said Lisa Wang from her position at the navigation station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, bringing up data on the main screen. "There's a lot of energy coming from the next star system, more than any natural source should produce." Jake walked over to look at the readings. The numbers made no sense. The energy output was massive, like watching a star explode but in slow motion. "Dan, what do you make of this?" he asked, turning to Science Officer Dan Murphy. Dan studied the data for several minutes, his face growing more confused. "Sir, this looks like weapons fire, but the scale is impossible. These energy signatures are bigger than anything we've ever seen. If someone is fighting out there, they're using weapons that could destroy entire planets." "How far away are we?" Jake asked Lisa. "About 2 hours at full speed," she replied. "Should we investigate or go around?" Jake thought about it. Their mission was to explore and report back to Earth. This could be exactly the kind of discovery that humanity needed to know about. On the other hand, if there really was a war happening, flying into the middle of it might not be the smartest idea. "We'll take a look," Jake decided, "but we stay far away and ready to run. Lisa, take us in slowly. Everyone else, stay alert." The USS Horizon changed course and headed toward the energy signatures. As they got closer, the readings became even more incredible. Engineer Pete Johnson came up from the engine room, shaking his head at his instruments. "Captain, whatever is happening out there is using more power than our entire ship produces in a year, and it's happening every few seconds," Pete said. "I've never seen anything like it." Communications Officer Amy Clark looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm picking up radio signals now. They're in languages I don't recognize, but there are definitely 2 different sources. They seem to be talking to each other, but not in a friendly way." "Can you translate anything?" Jake asked. "Not yet, but the computer is working on it. Give me a few more minutes." As the horizon got closer to the source of the energy readings, they began to see lights in the distance. At first, they looked like stars, but stars didn't move like that. These lights were dancing around each other, flashing brightly every few seconds. "My God," whispered Dan Murphy, staring at the main screen. "Those aren't lights, those are ships. Huge ships." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. As the image became clearer, he could see that Dan was right. There were hundreds of ships out there, split into 2 groups that were clearly fighting each other. The ships were enormous, some of them bigger than Earth's moon. The weapons they were using created flashes of light that could be seen from millions of miles away. "Amy, any luck with those translations?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Getting some words now, sir. Both sides keep using terms that translate to things like ancient enemy and eternal war. They're definitely not happy with each other." Lisa Wang was studying her navigation instruments. "Captain, based on the movement patterns, this battle has been going on for a while. The ships are moving in very predictable ways, like they've done this exact same fight many times before." "Pete," Johnson nodded. "The energy readings support that. These weapons are firing in regular patterns, almost like clockwork. It's like watching a dance where everyone knows the steps." Jake watched the battle unfold on the main screen. The 2 fleets were clearly different from each other. One group had ships that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, appearing just long enough to fire their weapons before vanishing again. The other group moved in perfect formation, with hundreds of smaller ships acting as one giant organism. "Dan, can you tell me anything about these species?" Jake asked. Dan was working frantically at his station. "The ships that keep disappearing seem to be using some kind of space-folding technology. They're not actually invisible. They're moving into a different dimension and then coming back. I've never seen anything like it." "And the other group?" "They're communicating constantly with each other. Every ship in their fleet knows exactly what every other ship is doing at all times. Perfect coordination. It's like they share one mind." Amy looked up from her communications panel. Sir, I'm getting more translation data. These two species have been fighting for a very long time. The computer estimates around 800,000 years. Jake nearly choked. 800,000 years? That's impossible. No war lasts that long. Apparently this one does, Amy replied. From what I can understand, they're called the Kythera and the Zilani. They've been locked in this conflict since before humans learned to make fire. The bridge fell silent as everyone tried to process this information. Jake watched the battle continue, noting how each side seemed to know exactly what the other would do. The flickering ships would appear, fire, and disappear, just as the perfectly coordinated fleet moved to where they had been. It was like watching a movie that someone had played thousands of times. Captain, Lisa said quietly, they've noticed us. Jake's blood went cold. On the main screen he could see some of the ships from both fleets turning in their direction. The USS Horizon was tiny compared to these massive vessels, but they had definitely been spotted. Are they coming toward us? Jake asked. No, sir. They're just looking. Like they're trying to figure out what we are. Pete Johnson was checking his instruments. Captain, our ship must look like a toy compared to what they're used to. We might not seem like a threat. Dan Murphy was studying the alien ships more closely. Sir, I think they're confused. Our technology is so primitive compared to theirs that they might not even recognize us as a real spaceship. Amy, are they trying to communicate with us? No, sir. They seem to be ignoring us now. Going back to their battle, Jake watched as the alien fleets returned their attention to each other, continuing their ancient dance of war. The human ship was so small and unremarkable that the aliens had dismissed it as unimportant. Well, Jake said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. At least they're not shooting at us. Lisa, can you get us out of here without getting too close to either fleet? I can try, sir, but we're going to have to go around them. This battle covers a huge area of space. As the USS Horizon began to carefully navigate around the edge of the ancient battlefield, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what they had discovered. Two species had been fighting for longer than humans had existed, using weapons that could destroy worlds, and they were so evenly matched that neither could win. Dan, Jake said, in your opinion, how does a war last 800,000 years? Dan thought about it for a moment. Only one way I can think of, sir. Both sides must be so perfectly matched that neither can gain any advantage. They've probably tried every possible strategy and tactic thousands of times. They know each other so well that nothing either side does can surprise the other anymore. Jake nodded slowly. It made sense in a terrible way. The aliens had become so advanced and so perfectly balanced that they were trapped in an endless stalemate, doomed to fight the same battle forever. The USS Horizon moved slowly around the edge of the battlefield, trying to avoid getting caught between the two massive alien fleets. Jake Morrison kept his eyes on the main screen, watching the strange dance of war that had been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. Pete Johnson was studying his engineering readings when something caught his attention. He frowned and looked closer at the data coming from the alien ships. After a few minutes, he walked over to Captain Morrison. Sir, I think I've noticed something odd about this battle, Pete said, holding up his tablet with the energy readings. What do you mean? Jake asked. Well, look at these patterns. Every time the flickering ships appear and fire, they do it in exactly the same spots. And every time the coordinated fleet moves to defend, they move to exactly the same positions. It's like they're following a script. Dan Murphy overheard and came over to look at Pete's data. He's right, Captain. I've been watching their tactics and they're completely predictable. The Kythera ships phase in, fire at predetermined targets, then phase out before the Zilani can respond. But the Zilani always move their ships to where the Kythera used to be, not where they are now. Amy Clark looked up from her communication station. I've been listening to their radio chatter. The translation is getting better, and you're not going to believe what they're saying to each other. What is it? Jake asked. They're not really talking about strategy or giving orders. They're mostly just insulting each other. The same insults, over and over. It's like they're reading from a very old, very boring book. Lisa Wang was plotting their course around the battle when she noticed something else. Captain, I've been tracking the movement of both fleets for the past hour. They're not actually trying to get an advantage over each other. They're just maintaining the same distance, firing the same weapons, and moving in the same patterns. They probably used yesterday and the day before that, and probably for the last 1,000 years. Jake felt a strange idea forming in his mind. Dan, you said earlier that both sides are perfectly matched. What exactly does that mean? Dan pulled up his analysis on the main screen. Well, sir, the Cathara have this amazing ability to phase, shift into another dimension. It makes them almost impossible to hit with normal weapons. But the Zilani have developed some kind of multi-dimensional targeting system that can track them even when they're phased, so the Cathara can't surprise them anymore. And the Zilani? The Zilani have this hive mind thing where all their ships act as one. They can coordinate attacks perfectly and defend against anything because they all know what every other ship is doing. But the Cathara have learned to predict their coordinated movements. They know exactly how the hive mind will respond to any situation. Pete nodded. It's like watching two chess masters who have played each other so many times that they know every possible move. Neither one can surprise the other anymore. Jake stared at the battle on the screen. The more he watched, the more he could see the patterns. The Cathara would appear, fire, and disappear. The Zilani would move their ships and fire back at empty space. Then they would reposition, and the Cathara would appear somewhere else and do the exact same thing again. Amy, what kind of damage are they actually doing to each other? Jake asked. Amy checked her readings. That's the strangest part, sir. They're barely hurting each other at all. Oh, they're using incredibly powerful weapons, but both sides have defenses that are almost perfect. A few ships get damaged, but they repair quickly and get right back into the fight. So this could literally go on forever, Jake said. It looks that way, sir. They're so evenly matched that neither side can win, but neither side will give up either. Lisa Wang was still working on their navigation when an alarm went off at her station. Captain, we have a problem. There's some kind of space distortion forming near us. I think we're getting pulled toward the battlefield. Jake felt his heart. Resa, can you get us out of it? I'm trying, sir, but whatever is causing this distortion is incredibly powerful. It might be some kind of side effect from all those weapons being fired. Pete Johnson was checking his engine readings. Captain, our engines are working fine, but we're definitely being pulled toward the battle. At this rate, we'll be right in the middle of both fleets in about 20 minutes. Dan Murphy was studying the distortion on his instruments. Sir, I think this happens regularly. The amount of energy being used in this battle is warping space around it. Ships probably get pulled in all the time. What happens to them? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. They probably get destroyed by accident. Both fleets are so focused on each other that they wouldn't even notice a small ship getting caught in their crossfire. Amy Clark was listening to the alien communications. Sir, neither fleet seems to have noticed that we're being pulled toward them. They're completely focused on their battle. Jake realized they were in serious trouble. The USS Horizon was being pulled toward a battle between two incredibly advanced civilizations, and neither side even knew they existed. They would be destroyed without either fleet even noticing. Options? Jake asked his crew. Pete shook his head. Our engines aren't powerful enough to break free from the distortion, Lisa added. I can't plot a course out of this. The space distortion is too chaotic. We could try to contact both fleets and ask for help, Amy suggested. Dan looked doubtful. Sir, I don't think they would care. From what we've seen, they're completely obsessed with fighting each other. A tiny human ship probably wouldn't matter to them. Jake stared at the screen, watching the endless dance of battle. Two species so advanced that their technology seemed like magic, locked in a war that had lasted longer than human civilization had existed, and now his ship and crew were about to become accidental casualties in a conflict that had nothing to do with them. But as he watched, Jake began to notice something else. The aliens weren't just evenly matched. They were perfectly predictable. Every move was calculated, every response was programmed, every tactic was something they had done countless times before. Dan, Jake said slowly, you said both sides know exactly how the other will respond to any situation. That's right, sir. They've been fighting so long that there are no surprises left. But what if there was a surprise? Something completely unexpected that neither side had ever seen before. Dan looked confused. What do you mean, sir? Jake was thinking hard now. What if a small primitive human ship did something completely unpredictable, something so stupid and chaotic that neither side could calculate how to respond? Pete Johnson caught on first. Captain, are you suggesting that we try to interfere with their battle? I'm suggesting that maybe the reason this war has lasted 800,000 years is because both sides have become too perfect. They've lost the ability to adapt to something truly unexpected. Amy Clark looked worried. Sir, these aliens have weapons that could destroy planets. We have mining charges and basic shields. How could we possibly affect their battle? Jake smiled for the first time since they had discovered the alien war. Amy, that's exactly the point. We're so primitive compared to them that they can't predict what we might do. We don't follow their rules because we don't even know what their rules are. Lisa Wang was starting to understand. Captain, are you saying that our weakness might actually be our strength? I'm saying that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to refuse to accept that it's impossible, Jake replied. These aliens are trapped in their own perfection. Maybe what they need is a little chaos. Dan Murphy looked at the battle on the screen, then back at Jake. Sir, this is either the bravest thing anyone has ever attempted or the most insane. Jake Morrison stood up straighter. Dan, in my experience, those two things are often the same. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the bridge, watching as the USS Horizon was pulled closer to the ancient battlefield. His crew looked at him with a mixture of trust and concern. They all knew that what he was planning was incredibly dangerous, but they also knew they had no other choice. All right, everyone listen carefully, Jake said. We're going to do something that no one in this galaxy has tried for 800,000 years. We're going to break the rules. Pete Johnson looked up from his engineering station. What do you need me to do, Captain? How many mining charges do we have left? Jake asked. About 20, sir. They're not very powerful, just designed to break up asteroids for easier mining. Perfect. I want you to prepare them for remote detonation. We're going to plant them around this battlefield. Dan Murphy looked confused. Sir, those charges won't even scratch the paint on these alien ships. Their shields can probably stop planet-killing weapons. Jake smiled. Dan, we're not trying to hurt them. We're trying to confuse them. Pete, can you modify the charges to create a lot of debris when they explode? Pete thought about it. Sure, Captain. If I set them off near some of the floating wreckage, out there they'll scatter metal and rock everywhere. Won't do any real damage, but it'll make a mess. Good. Amy, I need you to prepare a message to broadcast to both fleets, something they've never heard before. Amy Clark turned to her communication station. What kind of message, sir? A surrender offer, but not a normal one. We're going to surrender to both sides at the same time, and then ask them to prove which one deserves to accept our surrender by attacking us first. The bridge went quiet. Lisa Wang was the first to speak. Captain, you want to ask both fleets to shoot at us? That's exactly what I want to do. These aliens have been so focused on each other for so long that they've forgotten how to deal with a third party. When we challenge both sides at once, they won't know how to respond. Dan Murphy was running calculations on his screen. Sir, even if this confuses them, what happens when they do start shooting at us? We can't survive even one hit from their weapons. That's where Lisa comes in, Jake said, turning to his navigator. I need you to plot the most unpredictable course you can think of. Don't follow any logical pattern. Make turns that don't make sense. Fly toward danger when you should fly away from it. Do everything wrong. Lisa looked at him like he had lost his mind. Captain, everything I've learned about flying tells me that's a terrible idea. Lisa, these aliens can predict the logical response to any situation. They've been doing it for 800,000 years, but they can't predict completely illogical behavior because it doesn't follow any rules they understand. Amy had been working on the surrender message. Captain, I've got something ready. Should I broadcast it now? Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they trusted him. Before we do this, I want everyone to understand what we're trying to accomplish. We're not trying to win this battle or destroy these fleets. We're trying to break a pattern that has existed for longer than human civilization. If we succeed, we might end a war that has lasted 800,000 years. If we fail, well, at least we'll go down trying to do something impossible. Pete Johnson had finished preparing the mining charges. Captain, the charges are ready. I can launch them in small pods that will drift toward the debris fields. Do it, Jake ordered. Spread them out around the battlefield, but don't detonate them yet. Lisa Wang was studying her navigation controls. Sir, I think I understand what you want me to do. Instead of trying to avoid getting caught between the two fleets, you want me to deliberately put us in the most dangerous position possible. Exactly. When both fleets try to attack us, they'll end up getting in each other's way. That's something that hasn't happened in this war for thousands of years. Amy looked up from her communication station. Captain, should I send the message? Now? Jake took a deep breath. Send it to both fleets simultaneously. Make sure they both receive it at exactly the same time. Amy pressed the broadcast button, and her voice went out across the battlefield in both alien languages. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel USS Horizon. We surrender to both the Kithara and Zalani fleets. However, we can only surrender to the superior force. We challenge both fleets to prove their superiority by destroying our ship first. The fleet that eliminates us will be recognized as the winner of this battle. The response was immediate. Both alien fleets stopped their ancient dance of war and turned toward the small human ship. For the first time in centuries, their attention was focused on something other than each other. Dan Murphy was watching his sensors in amazement. Captain, you did it. Both fleets have stopped fighting each other. They're both moving toward us. Here comes the hard part, Jake said. Lisa, start your crazy flying. Pete, get ready to detonate those charges. Amy, keep broadcasting our surrender message, but add something new every few minutes. Keep them confused about what we want. Lisa Wang pushed the ship's engines to full power and began the most chaotic flight pattern in the history of space travel. She turned left when she should turn right, accelerated when she should slow down, and flew directly toward the largest concentration of alien ships instead of away from them. The effect on both alien fleets was immediate and dramatic. The Kithara ships began phasing in and out of normal space erratically, trying to target a ship that wasn't following any logical flight plan. Their perfectly calculated phase jumps became random and confused. The Zalani hive mind was having even more trouble. Their entire advantage was based on perfect coordination, but they couldn't coordinate an attack on a target that was behaving completely unpredictably. Different parts of their fleet were receiving contradictory information about where the human ship would be next. Now, Pete, Jake shouted. Pete Johnson detonated the mining charges scattered around the battlefield. The explosions were tiny compared to the alien weapons, but they created clouds of debris that scattered in all directions. The perfectly organized battlefield became chaotic for the first time in millennia. Amy Clark was adding to the confusion by broadcasting random messages. We surrender, but only on Tuesdays. We challenge you to a dance contest. Our ship is powered by friendship and good intentions. Please ignore this message, it's not important. Dan Murphy was watching his sensors, in disbelief. Captain, the Kithara ships are starting to phase into the same space as the Zalani ships. They're interfering with each other's movements. Jake could see it happening on the main screen. Both fleets were trying to attack the human ship, but their perfectly coordinated tactics were falling apart. Kithara ships were phasing into normal space right in the middle of Zalani formations, while Zalani ships were trying to coordinate attacks on a target that was moving randomly through space, filled with unexpected debris. It's working, Lisa said, spinning the ship in a completely unnecessary loop. They can't predict what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to do. For the first time in 800,000 years, the ancient battlefield was truly chaotic. Ships were crashing into each other, weapons were firing in random directions, and both fleets were more confused than they had been since the war began. Amy was still broadcasting random messages. We formally surrender to whoever can solve this riddle. What's black and white and red all over? We'll wait here while you figure it out. Jake watched as centuries of perfect military planning fell apart around them. The two most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were being completely outmaneuvered by a small human ship with mining charges and a crew that refused to follow any logical rules. Dan, Are they still trying to shoot us? Jake asked. Yes, sir, but they keep hitting each other instead. The Cathera can't phase properly because the Zilani ships are in their way, and the Zilani can't coordinate because the Cathera keep appearing in unexpected places. Jake Morrison smiled as he watched 800,000 years of deadlock crumble into beautiful chaos. Sometimes the best way to win was to refuse to play by the rules everyone else thought were unbreakable. The battlefield had become something that neither the Cathera nor the Zilani had seen in 800,000 years. Completely unpredictable. Ships were flying in all directions, weapons were firing at random targets, and the perfect coordination that both species had relied on for so long was falling apart. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the USS Horizon as the chaos continued around them. Lisa Wang was still flying the ship in impossible patterns, dodging between massive alien vessels that were now colliding with each other instead of fighting in their ancient, predictable dance. "Captain," Dan Murphy called out, studying his sensors, "something strange is happening. Both fleets are starting to pull back from each other." Jake looked at the main screen. Dan was right. For the first time since they had arrived, the alien ships were creating distance between themselves instead of maintaining their eternal battle positions. Amy Clark was monitoring the communications between both fleets. "Sir, the chatter is changing. They're not insulting each other anymore. They sound confused and maybe a little excited." "Excited?" Jake asked. "It's hard to translate exactly, but they keep using words that mean things like new and unexpected and interesting. I don't think they've used those words in thousands of years." Pete Johnson was watching the energy readings from both fleets. "Captain, their weapons have stopped firing at each other completely. They're all pointed at us, but they're not shooting." Lisa Wang continued her chaotic flight pattern, but she noticed something too. "Sir, they're not trying to hit us anymore either. It's like they're just watching us." Jake felt a strange realization forming in his mind. "Amy, can you translate what they're saying to each other now?" Amy worked at her station for a few minutes, then looked up with surprise on her face. "Captain, they're talking to each other, for the first time in centuries. Not threatening or insulting, but actually communicating. The Cathera are asking the Zilani how they managed to predict some of our movements, and the Zilani are asking the Cathera about their phasing technology." Dan Murphy's eyes widened. "Sir, I think they're comparing notes about us. They're trying to figure out together how we managed to disrupt their battle." Jake realized what was happening. They've rediscovered curiosity. For 800,000 years they've known everything about each other. But we've shown them something completely new, and now they want to understand it. The USS Horizon continued its erratic flight through the battlefield, but the alien ships had stopped trying to attack. Instead, they were following at a safe distance, like scientists studying a new species of animal. Amy was getting more translations. "Captain, they're discussing whether to continue their battle or to focus on studying us. It sounds like they can't decide which is more important." "What are they saying exactly?" Jake asked. "The Cathera are saying that we represent the first, truly unpredictable element they've encountered in millennia. The Zilani are arguing that understanding our chaotic behavior could give them new tactical advantages, but then the Cathera point out that the same advantage would apply to them too." Jake began to understand what was happening. Both species had spent so long fighting each other that they had forgotten what it was like to face a genuine unknown. The human ship had reminded them of something they had lost, the thrill of encountering something they couldn't immediately understand or predict. "Dan," Jake said, "in your opinion, what would happen if both species focused on studying us instead of fighting each other?" Dan thought about it. "Well, sir, they'd have to work together to some extent. We're too unpredictable for either side to figure out alone. They'd need to share information and coordinate their research." "And what would that mean for their war?" "It would mean the war would have to stop, at least temporarily. You can't study something properly while you're also trying to blow each other up." Jake made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Amy, open a channel to both fleets. I want to speak to both of them at the same time." "Channel open, sir." Jake took a deep breath and began speaking. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship USS Horizon. We've been watching your battle, and we have a proposal for both the Kithra and Zalani fleets. There was immediate response from both sides. Amy quickly translated. Sir, they both want to know what kind of proposal. Tell them this, Jake said. We know you've been fighting for 800,000 years because you're perfectly matched. Neither side can surprise the other anymore. But we've just proven that surprises are still possible. We represent something new in your galaxy. True unpredictability. Amy translated Jake's words, and the response was immediate chatter from both fleets. They're very interested, sir. Both sides are asking what you're proposing. Jake continued. We propose that instead of fighting each other with tactics you both know by heart, you should both focus on understanding how we humans approach warfare. We'll teach you about controlled chaos, unpredictable strategies, and adaptive thinking. But here's the catch. You'll have to work together to learn from us. The alien chatter increased dramatically. Amy was working hard to keep up with the translations. Sir, this is causing quite a debate. Some ships from both sides think it's a trap, but others are saying it's the most interesting offer they've received in thousands of years. Dan Murphy was monitoring both fleets. Captain, something remarkable is happening. Ships from both sides are moving into mixed formations. Kithara and Zalani vessels are positioning themselves near each other without fighting. Jake watched the screen in amazement. For the first time in 800,000 years, the two enemy fleets were voluntarily sharing the same space without trying to destroy each other. Amy, what are they saying now? They're asking for a demonstration, sir. They want to see more examples of human unpredictability. Both sides are agreeing that you've done something they thought was impossible. Jake looked around at his crew. Well, we've got their attention. Lisa, can you show them some more impossible flying? Lisa Wang grinned. Captain, I've got an idea that will really confuse them. She began flying the USS Horizon in a pattern that made absolutely no sense. Instead of trying to escape or attack, she flew the ship directly between the two fleets, then stopped right in the middle and began spinning in place. The effect on both alien fleets was immediate. Ships from both sides moved closer to observe this bizarre behavior, and for the first time in millennia, Kithara and Zalani vessels were flying side by side, united in their curiosity about the strange human ship. Pete Johnson was laughing at his engineering station. Captain, both fleets are sending scanning beams at us. They're trying to figure out how our ship works. And are they sharing the data? Jake asked. Dan Murphy checked his sensors. Yes, sir. I'm detecting communication, links between Kithara and Zalani ships. They're actually cooperating to study us. Amy received another message from both fleets. Sir, they're formally requesting a ceasefire so they can focus on understanding human tactics. Both sides agree that we represent a more interesting challenge than fighting each other. Jake Morrison realized that they had accomplished something that seemed impossible just hours ago. A small human ship with basic technology had ended a war that had lasted 800,000 years, not through superior firepower or advanced strategy, but by reminding two ancient enemies that there were still new things to discover in the universe. Amy, send this message to both fleets, Jake said. Tell them that humans would be honored to share our knowledge of adaptive warfare and controlled chaos, but explain that our methods only work because we never stop learning and changing. If they want to understand us, they'll have to be willing to change too. As the USS Horizon prepared to begin humanity's first role as galactic military instructors, Jake looked out at the two massive fleets that were now working together instead of destroying each other. Sometimes the most impossible problems had the simplest solutions. You just had to be willing to try something completely crazy. The 800,000-year war was over, ended not by superior weapons or perfect strategy, but by a small group of humans who refused to accept that some things were impossible.